Morena tātou. Morena tātou no mai haere mai, ki tēnei rā. I would like to start today's meeting with a whakatauki, which I feel is particularly appropriate at this time. Ki te kotahi te kākahu, ka whati. Ki te kāpua e kore e whati. And what this tells us is if a single reed can be easily broken, but when the reeds bind together, they will not be broken. And that was a whakatauki by King Tawhio, I think. Yes? Yes. And why I want to start with that, because I'm very mindful that New Zealanders and our local communities are still very much hurting from the tragic events in Christchurch. And some views were shared by individuals that are not the views of this council. And I think it's important that I make that very clear, that the views that individuals may have made in the last few days are not the views of this council. Councillor Casson has indicated his wish to make both public apologies and apologies to this council, and those are appropriate, and I believe that will be happening over the course of this day. So on that matter, we will now move on, and welcome to our guests. Today, we've got a really nice agenda focused on firmly on the community, on the arts, on recreation, on our ethnic communities, and many other good things. Are there any apologies?
Here.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to make that an apology for lateness. Somebody happy to do that? Councillor McPherson?
Ollie's not here.
Ollie's not here at the moment, so...
Are you allowed to just throw an apology for lateness for someone who hasn't given their apology?
Did they give their apology?
No.
She, okay, thank you. I didn't hear it from you.
I thought you were asking somebody to...
No, Dave chose to put an apology for lateness on behalf of Angela, so that's fine with me. Any other apologies? We haven't any. Those in... No,
You
I didn't.
asked us if somebody wanted to put it up. I'm just ensuring that she did give an apology. And it did confirm that.
To be quite clear, I have not received an apology from Angela. We do know she's in the building. Dave suggested that because of that, he would like to move that her apology for lateness be accepted. I did not move that. Dave moved that. If he has a seconder, we can accept that with the motion. Is there a...
Turn up, it's all out, off the table.
Okay. You're seconding? Oh. That's all right. Mayor Andrew has now seconded it. Now that it's all understood, we're all on the same page. So those are all the apologies. All in favour?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I don't know when the appropriate time is to bring it up, but I've got a pretty blocked ear and I can hardly hear anything today, so I apologise if I ask people to repeat stuff. Just asking for a bit of indulgence from the meeting.
Okay. Your apology is accepted, and I'll just shout at you across the room. Yeah. Okay. Right. Those in favour of the apologies be accepted, say aye. Opposed, carried. The confirmation of the agenda, there is a little move in the agenda to, as you will see, that item 11 has come up just behind Sarah's item, so Matthew, who's here, can get away to other business afterwards. So that being the case, move the confirmation of the agenda. Somebody? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Henry, all in favour? Opposed? Carried. Right, we're now into declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest on the matters within this agenda? There being none, we'll move on. Public forum, I understand we have one group represented in the public forum today. Is that right?
That's correct.
So it's Sink or Swim. If you would like to come forward, we now sit up here. You do have 5 minutes as one organisation to cover off your topics. Yes, yes, you will have to. And councillors, because this is a matter that is before, already in the process of a consent process, we won't be asking any questions. We will just listen to the views of Sink and Swim and keep our commentary and our questions out of it at this time. Okay, so the bell will ding at 4 minutes, just to let you know that you have 1 minute. Yeah. And yeah, we've got quite a tight meeting today, so I'm afraid we won't be going over time. Okay, so just waiting for the overheads to come up.
Come up for you.
Belated apologies for lateness from Councillor O'Leary. We've discovered that she's upstairs because her laptop won't open anything up, so she's trying to get IT support so she can get her agenda and come on down to the meeting. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start with a vision of what the municipal pools could be like if council decided not to demolish it, but to rebuild it in a modern way that incorporates its heritage value. Today we're going to talk about the Chair's report. Talks about maintaining all existing community assets that are or have been well used by our communities to support a wide range of recreational activity. The munis fit exactly into that category of assets. So going back to the start, who is Sink or Swim? We're a group of individual swimmers. We're not affiliated to any club, and we speak for individual swimmers throughout the city who want to be able to swim in an open-air pool. We also speak for people who are concerned about the heritage aspects of the municipal pools. The pools opened in 1912, and because we don't have a lot of time, you can read all this later, but they closed in 2012, having been not maintained since the 1990s. Council chose to not maintain them. That decision to not maintain them was later found by the Audit Office to not meet local government requirements. Now we get the situation where council, there was a decision in the long-term plan to demolish the munis, and you have to consider your council functions to enable democratic local decision-making by and on behalf of communities. Does the decision to demolish the munis meet that?
It's coming, don't worry, carry on.
Anyway, so I would note just on the question of the demolition consent application, there were 31 submissions. One of those submissions was for demolition by a member of the public who did not wish to speak to her submission. There were 30 submissions against demolition, many by organised bodies, including a statutory body, Heritage New Zealand, 14 of those submitters wished to speak. And when you consider the number, the petitions of 2,500 people back in 2013, the 45 submissions for the municipal pools and 1 submission against in the 2015 long-term plan, etc., etc., you have to understand that the municipal pools is what the community want, and you are there to support the community, and you are there to support your policies. Demolishing the municipal pools does nothing.
Just adding to that, we all know that we've got climate change happening. We all know we've had a record hot summer, and it's only going to get hotter over the next decades. And outdoor swimming is a favoured type of activity in the heat of summer. In an inner city, in an inland city where we do not have safe swimming in a river. We need to consider this, as well as the fact that the inner city and the central city is being well and truly filled in with infill housing. We've got a lot more development happening around in the city. Considering putting a facility back where it has always been is a better use of ratepayers' money. The $1 million being spent to demolish could be better spent to refurbish this pool. You need to really consider what your community wants and have a go at trying to look and revision what that pool can look like. There's been a lot of talk of large sums of money. We are not asking for a bells and whistles solution here. We're asking for a functional swimming pool. That isn't difficult. I recently was in Wellington and looked at the Kandala outdoor cold water pool. It had been empty for a week. It did not look much different from the municipal pools now, except that its blue paint was a little fresher. These sorts of facilities are really worth having in the city. They're really worth it for people who don't have a lot of money, who can't afford private pools in their backyards, and who cannot afford to go to gyms where there are membership fees. We need to have public facilities, and this council's been a bit lax in looking after the ones it's got. Try and find a better solution. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming in and for the very concise and two-point comments.
I would mention that one of our speakers who was not able to speak is a former Olympian, Gail Johnson, who swam at the municipal pools during her training, who has been a police officer, who understands the needs of police officers to have a ready facility for them to practice their fitness and swimming. But unfortunately, we've run out of time.
Yes. Yeah.
And just to add to that,
Oh, you're pushing the boundaries now, but
it was an affront to people like Gail, who in the recent cultural heritage commissioned document by a heritage writer from Auckland to say that there was little value in the representation at national or international level by swimmers out of the municipal pool. That was an absolute affront to people the likes of Gail. Thank you.
Thank you.
On the process, if
Sure.
I may, following your comment,
Yes,
which
yep.
I agree with,
thank you, ladies.
has council been asked what it wants to go into its staff submission to the resource consent hearing?
Where's that at the moment? I don't.
I might just get Debbie to comment on the process.
Has there been any council input into the submission that staff will submit to the hearings? Or what's the process for councillor input into the staff submission to? That's right, isn't it, Dave?
Well, if there's a resource consent hearing, there will be staff statement or submission on behalf of council, and I'm trying to find out if there's been any opportunity or will be any opportunity for councillors to have a say in what that says, because it's on behalf of council. You know, that's part of the process. If there's no hearing, that's another thing, but I'm pretty sure there is going to be a hearing given the contention. So I'm trying to find out about the process here. Fair enough, we can't ask questions now, but where do we have our input?
Is that a quick answer to that, or do you need to come back to? You have to check. Look,
Could we be advised of that, and maybe the timeline for submissions and things like that as well?
absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll
get that.
we'll send something out either, what's today, either a separate email or an executive update, just so you know what's going on.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, everyone. That brings us on to item number 5, which is the confirmation of the minutes from the previous meeting. I'm happy to move those. Is there a seconder for that? To Porter? All in, any comments, questions? All in favour? Carried. We're now on to the Chair's report, which I'm going to take as read, because it's very short and to point. Happy to move it. I wrote it. Emily seconded it. Councillor Taylor. Any questions, comments on that report? Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the third paragraph, I'm pleased to know that work is on track to refresh the entranceway and front windows of the library. Have we seen any pictures of that? What it's going to look like?
They have the whole. We did at a update, I believe. See the draft design for the windows. But if you haven't seen them or you can't recall them, I can get them to you to have a
I
look
don't think
at.
I can recall them. Yeah, that would be lovely if we can just have that circulated again.
Yep.
That'd be
Yes,
lovely. Thank you so
absolutely.
much.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, comments on the report? There being none, we've got a mover and a seconder. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. That brings us up to the creative Waikato, the creative side of our community, and the State of Arts report. Sarah, welcome.
Kia ora, morena. Good to see you all, as always. Lovely to be invited to come and talk about positive things, because actually it's so nice to report that in our sector it is pretty much all good news at the moment. You've received my report. Didn't really intend to go through it blow by blow, more perhaps have a conversation, but maybe I'll pick up on a few of the highlights. The first section there is every 3 years Creative New Zealand does some really intensive national research on arts engagement. And this year we added some funds to that research to make sure we got a really significant sample size, so we knew that we had meaningful information for engagement for the arts in the Waikato, because we have been pretty light on data in the past, to be honest. What it tells us is again, mostly good news. When you have a level of 78% of people who are engaged with the arts, and when we talk about engagement, that's either they've attended something or they're participating in something. So 67% of people in the Waikato attend arts events or arts activities, and nearly 50%, 47%, actually actively do things in the arts. That's half of our community are doing creative things. So that's a really great thing to keep in the back of our minds. One of the negative statistics was a sharp decline in attendance, and we can easily put that down to the absence of founders, because we know the statistics in our other creative infrastructure, then all their numbers are going up. So it's just because it's such a large number of bums on seats over an annual period that we've notched a decline in attendance. Listen, the rest of it speaks for itself around how the community views the arts and its importance. Something that I'm super proud of at the moment is our relationship with Creative New Zealand. And when Creative Waikato was formed 7 years ago, one of our number one mandates was to engage CNZ, because at the time it felt like we weren't even on their radar. We have gone from a point of very low funding, and some of these outcomes are scattered across this report. If you just jump to the second page, there's a bit of a graph there. And you'll see this is the total amount of funding from Creative New Zealand into the Waikato region for arts projects. So in 2013, it was $624,000. In 2018, it was $1,412,000. So that's an increase of 126%, not 26, 126% over 5 years. I don't think 7 years ago I could have dreamt that we would have got an outcome like that. And that number is going to keep going up because we've had some recent commitments about future investment. Some of that future investment will be, again, it's all interconnected here. One of the things I talk about there is the Waikato New Works Incubator. That was an initiative we put to Creative New Zealand. It's lovely when government organisations come up to the 31st of June and you know they might have a little bit of spare money. We put a fairly bold proposal to them in June around developing local stories for the community here and to build capability in our creative community towards the development of the new regional theatre. So we know when we open that in 2021, we have local stories and local people being front and centre of that facility. They found that to be a compelling argument and they gave us $90,000 for the first year to start building that incubator. And out of that, we have 7 works currently in development. From those 7 works, up to 3 works will be chosen. And each of those works will be given the equivalent of a full arts grant of up to $65,000 each. So they become works of national significance. No one in the Waikato has ever had an arts grant of $65,000 before. This is a first, and we're going to get up to 3 in one hit because of this initiative. So you can see this return on investment is really paying off. And it's a matter of you know, spreading that so it doesn't all go into, you know, one very specific area with a limited impact. That's a wide community impact response. Another way that we're getting investment from Creative New Zealand in the next year, and this is a little more undefined, but they have just completed their Toi Māori National Strategy. And they have identified 4 regions in New Zealand in which they want to prioritise and invest in Māori arts development. And they have identified that the Waikato and Hamilton is one of those 4 areas. So the relationship is very strong. They literally did say at the last presentation, I know a number of you, thank you for coming along to that, a number of you came to a cocktail party that they hosted in our office over in Garden Place. It was great to see you. The next morning we did a presentation and the chair said, Creative Waikato is the poster child for arts development agencies in the country. So we know we are leading the model. There's a bit of pressure with that, but it's also really satisfying. What I'm currently trying to do is actually lead. It puts pressure on us, though, because then you have the other arts agencies around the country wanting your IP. And we want to help, but we've got a job to do here. So there's only so far we can stretch. So I currently have an initiative, and we're going to be down in Wellington in June talking about how potentially Creative Waikato can lead and help establish a national regional arts bodies collective, because when we all get stronger, you know, when we individually get stronger, we all get stronger together. And that will take a little bit of the pressure off us, so we're trying to advocate to Creative New Zealand to take that lead. So there's a lot about CNZ. Let's talk locally. Founders Theatre, not Founders Theatre, that's the heading. Waikato Regional Theatre, much nicer thing to talk about. We were, as you know, we've reported on previously, heavily involved with consultation, community engagement in those first couple of critical years. As you know, they're now at detailed design, resource consent applications. You know, it's all getting very close to Kelvin being able to press the official go button. Our involvement in the last 6 months hasn't been as much as they've been working through more of that technical detail, but we're kicking back into our engagement with them now. And most recently, we had a meeting with Jasmax, the architect, as you know, and talking about arts integration into the design of the building. So that happens on a number of different levels. Where does the, you know, what is the treatment of the hautori? How is that done with respect and intelligence? What is the treatment of the walls? Are there carvings on the handrails? What is the fully integrated approach to art in that building? How does it make you feel as a community member when you move into that space? How does it represent you, the community of now and the community of the future? So we're going to do a piece of work where we're going to consult and get feedback from the community about what they want to see and feel and what that brief should be. Then they'll get a curator in who will oversee that art integration into space. It's not just about a beautiful outside, it's about a beautiful inside, and that's before we even get into the auditorium. So that's a really exciting piece of work that we're just starting on now. Ooh, probably the only, look, we literally are in boon time. We've just had the 4th Boon Festival, as you know, the Street Art Festival in the city, which is having a phenomenally positive impact on city. I want to thank and commend council for supporting your involvement through 2 significant walls with the library and this wall right here, I think it is. Oh, where are we? I don't know. Yes, it is. It's that wall right there. The feedback from I don't know if you're getting the feedback, but the feedback is phenomenal. So thank you for just allowing that natural wave of creativity and expression to happen and let it happen on your walls, because I think there would certainly be councils in the past that would not have happened. And I think we're all benefiting tremendously from that. So I really do thank you for that. Oh, it's enough of me. Are you going to ask me questions?
Yes, and people are going to ask you some
Excellent.
questions. But before they do, just want to say after that, what an awesome presentation, and thank you for Creative Waikato and your team for the leadership that you've done in creating this a fabulous story. It doesn't happen accidentally, so all credit to you.
Appreciated.
Councillor Mallett, you're first.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Sarah. Your second paragraph, Creative New Zealand Regional Arts pilot outcome, talks about $250,000 invested across Waikato for several needed arts initiatives. Could you just expand on what they were?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's even a typo. It was $250,000 a year, so it's actually $500,000. I just noticed that when I was sitting over there. So a number. Okay,
because it's 16 to 18.
Yeah, it's actually over 2 years. There was a number. Let me think. Okay, some of them were. Are identified in here. So it talks about artillery. So that is arts development program. So that was one of the, and that was around, we used about 100 to get that done. The really good thing is that's...
Whereabouts does that happen?
It happens all over the region.
Okay, so, all right. So is that a granting type?
No. What we did was developed a capacity building program. It's like a training program.
Oh, okay.
Training program for arts organisations and artists for them to become more sustainable in their work and in their communities. So we deliver it. So it's everything from how to market your artwork to how to raise funding, those sorts of things. So it's teaching arts and the arts community to be more self-sufficient and strategic. And now they've finished funding it, we own it. So we now deliver it for free to the community. So that will have an ongoing legacy. That's one thing. Another thing was the digital audience development pilot. So that's allowed us to get all of the major arts groups in Hamilton together to co-promote arts activity in the city. So rather than only ever hearing from the Meteor or only ever hearing from Orchestra Central, you're getting a more holistic picture of what's going on in the city, and it's building audiences and attendance. So that was another one.
So you're asking one group to promote another group?
Well, they do. No, we've asked them to collaborate in one new platform.
Oh, okay.
And encourage their databases to sign up for this, so their database will get everyone's information.
So, like, we have the what's it called, H Live or something, isn't it?
Yeah, H3, yeah.
But they send out emails and
they have their own one.
So that hasn't interfaced, or?
We asked them to, and they weren't interested, which we thought was a shame. I'm not giving up on that one.
Okay, all right, thank
you. If you can do some nudging from your end.
All right, thank you.
Greatly appreciated.
Okay, and the Founders Theatre, which actually turned out to be the regional theatre.
Yes.
This is a very important one, requesting Creative Waikato develop a draft framework outline for operating the strategy for the new theatre operating company. My understanding is that council won't be running the theatre. There'll be professionals in there doing that. I just wonder if you could update where we're on with that.
Yeah, so I think that's a really important clarification. It's very, I could have given you a 3-pager just on that alone.
Yeah.
What it really was saying, what are the operational approaches that could be considered? So when I say it wasn't an operational...
Sheila, would you mind just defining what you mean by operational? So does that mean recruiting acts into the theatre as well as running it once those acts, like, is this, will this be the promoter role as well as the operator?
No.
Okay.
Back up.
One second, I'm happy to just let this question run through.
Yeah.
But then we do need to keep on the topic, which is the arts report, because we will be getting the in-depth feedback around how the theatre is tracking, and just to give you
So I'll give you a
sufficient time to-
very clear but short. It's not us telling them how to do it. When we talk about, you've got asset building and you've got operational. Operational includes how it operates. Everything from employing the people to how many people to what technicians to how much you're going to charge to how you're going to get your acts in and how you're going to program it. All of that. What I did was what I did actually with another consultant who is appointed by Momentum is outline the different ways you could approach it. So there's several different frameworks in how different theatres operate nationally, regionally, internationally. So it was really an outline of operational options to help educate the Asset Trust as to how to go forward. It wasn't a recommendation, it was a framework from them to use as a reference. Make sense?
Kind of, yep, all right, that'll do.
Okay.
My time's up, I think.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson? Councillor McPherson?
Firstly, thanks, Sarah, for the easy-to-read report. That was good. The big jump in funding for the last financial year, just finished, what do you put that down to? Is it extra special work we've done here, or a good new government, or a combination, or something else?
No, nothing to do with government. Those decisions would have been made before that. It's a combination of all the other things. It's a combination of engagement with the region. So that's some of the specific investment that I've talked about, particularly around the arts, the incubator. But then also we are helping lots of individuals be more successful with their applications. And as the profile of the whole region grows, more of our Waikato applicants are becoming successful.
Because historically we've not done that well compared with some other parts of the country. We've sort of not seen as one of the main arts centres in the past.
So you can see that it's completely been turned around.
Excellent,
Yeah.
thanks.
Can I just say, from a council point of view, what my staff and I have seen is that Creative Waikato has done a really good job in building capacity, and that was one of the key frameworks from 3 years ago with the Arts Forum that we talked about.
Yeah.
And I think we're now getting the fruits of that, and I think it's fantastic that that's happening, because you're exactly right. We weren't all that successful, and we didn't seem to have much of a voice in Wellington, several years ago. But I think that's changed considerably now.
Yep.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks, Sarah, to you and your team for the report, as well as your long-term involvement too with Creative Waikato. My first question is around the Waikato Arts Navigator, which is on page 2 of your report, in which you mentioned that some of the regional councils appear to have come to, some of the other councils in the Waikato area have come to the party with some funding. I've since reread that, and I assume it's 22,000 in total from all of those councils.
That's
is that
correct.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Is that's the first time we've had any funding, or you've had any funding from outside of the funding that you get from Hamilton City Council?
That's correct. And so it's been a very strategic approach to start low and build confidence. And give them, so the first thing, the Navigator itself is simply a strategy framework for arts development. Unlike Hamilton City Council, most of those councils don't have arts strategies. So it's to assist them with building strategy and a decision-making model for arts decisions. And then to help support us with the work in the region. So the most that we asked from the bigger councils was $6,000, but it's $6,000 per year for 3 years, so a total of $18,000 over 3 years.
That answers my second question as to whether it's ongoing.
It's for the 3-year period, so we approached them at the 10-year plan in the last round, and then we'll run that and we'll show them the results, and then we'll crank it up.
And is that committing you and your team to go out into those regions and help them with their theatre groups and
We do that anyway. We're finally just getting something back for it.
Okay. So is it cost effective in the sense of the time that you're putting in?
Oh, completely. We're funded by Trust Waikato to do that work.
Okay, that's fine.
It's just now they've got some skin in the game.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Thank you. And my last question is around the Garden Place activation. You're aware that that Hamilton City have given a substantial amount of a grant to HCBA to activate the central city area. Are you working in collaboration with them to get the best bang from what you're spending on activation and what we've given them also to spend?
Well, 20,000 of what we spend is your money. They gave us a portion of their budget to deliver that activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're using a portion of our own money, and then we're using a portion that Vanessa allocated us under a contract to deliver X amount of events.
Okay.
And those events specifically, I mean, it's tremendous value for what we got. We've run 2 major events. One was a major contemporary dance battle, which happened. One was a major weekend buskers event, which happened on the same weekend as Boone. And the other one is weekly concerts, which is happening over the entire daylight savings period. Vanessa and I are getting together this month, and we're going to sit down and review. And we've both got ideas about what's effective and what is giving us bang for buck. And we'll review that, obviously, because it's, it was considered a one-off, and then we'll have a look and we'll see what we can do together next year.
Okay, thank you, Sarah, and good luck with your season starting on Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Māngai Te Pōra.
Tēnā koe, Sarah. Kia ora, good morning.
Tēnā koe.
The Toi Waikato Kia Whai Hua paper, where might we find that? I just had a look on the Creative Waikato website.
Yep, you should be able to find it, but
yeah.
it is online, but I'll directly send you a link. I'll
that'd
grab
be
your
good.
card before I leave.
So the reason that I asked that is, so you're saying that the paper's available for everybody to use, but to what extent will Creative Waikato follow that through in regards to making partnerships or implementing, I don't know if there's recommendations in there?
So it was an assessment of the sector and its needs.
Yeah.
Creative Waikato doesn't necessarily have the ability to deliver on those, but as you say, it's about partnerships. So what we're already seeing is partnerships with Creative New Zealand manifesting. The challenging one is partnerships with iwi, because I think that is going to be key to a number of things. So if I would love to come and talk to you about possibilities of developing inroads there. We have made some attempts, but not particularly fruitful yet, but I understand that, these things take time.
We can make that fruitful. And so good to hear that Waikato Hamilton is being chosen as one of the groups for the focus on. Is it more focused, is there a particular area that it's focused on?
I don't know. All that I know is that we have been identified. Yeah. She did say Tainui iwi.
Yeah.
Because we have 4 iwi in the region that we operate, but I think it is specifically around Tainui.
Okay, excellent. And sorry, just right down to, we've talked about Toi Rangatahi.
Yes.
So they'll be supported by local artists?
So that is, so that application is in at the moment, and it is a mentoring program of high achieving local artists, mentoring up and coming, and the actual criteria for that funding is working with youth in areas of deprivation.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Thanks for your report, Sarah. I've just got a couple of questions to staff. First of all, possibly the General Manager. We're missing our annual report scorecard on our arts agenda, and to my recollection, we haven't had one this term. Is there a reason for that? It is an action in our arts agenda.
It's probably an oversight.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, I'll indicate that I may have an addition to the motion to pick that up, because we're obviously 2 years into this term and we haven't had a scorecard. Thank you for that. So, Sarah, just following on from Dave's look at the massive funding, the massive funding jump with Creative New Zealand, which is awesome. What does the future look like? Do you think that will be sustainable, or are they playing a little bit of catch up with us?
I think that's certainly sustainable, and I think the new Waikato Regional Theatre will be critical to that. You know, there's actually, and back to Dave's question and to yours, actually just occurred to me, one of the significant chunks of that is the investment into our orchestras. They qualified for kahakatia funding, which is the highest level of secured multi-year funding. Again, that's a first for our region. So as long as we can continue to deliver, they will continue to invest. And it's like any major arts organisation, you know, if you look at what happened in Wellington and Dunedin, the two major theatres that were receiving very high level of funding from Creative New Zealand, but they couldn't be sustainable. Their governance wasn't doing what it ought to, and they cut funding because they weren't delivering. So it's a two-way street. As long as we continue performing, I have no reason why. In fact, it should increase.
Yeah. And I noticed one of the things in your report was the getting a regional arts award program together. I'm very excited about that. Now, that is also an action under our arts agenda.
Yep.
So are you working with anyone in our building on that?
Well, funnily enough, that was something that our prior mayor was particularly interested in, and at the time that being on that list was driven by our previous mayor. And we worked with her at the time. That was about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, no, something like that. Yeah. And I cannot recall why it didn't go forward, but it just certainly didn't get the momentum to be continued. We were also slightly uncomfortable about how we could do that in partnership. It felt like we were doing all the work, but without any support. Yeah. So I've now got a model of which we can lead it, and I think it's the right thing to lead it from Creative Waikato. So that work, I'm going to start framing up that strategy in the next couple of months. But I would certainly be looking for partnerships, and I know already from initial conversations I will have partnership from Trust Waikato, and that is over and above our funding. They're really interested in that, and Kelvin from Momentum has indicated he's also very interested in that. So I would love to have a conversation with Council as well. I don't think it has to be an overly indulgent, expensive exercise, but what I can see is it's something recognising major contributions to the arts sector. I imagine we will probably hold it at the Meteor annually, and then I think it will become a really important event that will move into the Waikato Regional Theatre.
Great, thank you. One last question to staff. I am really concerned about there's an awful lot of actions in our arts agenda that we have clearly not been monitoring, let alone actually delivering. So where does that sit in your department? Who is responsible for that strategy? And what are we going to do about it?
Well, it's me, and it's also in Helen's Parkies area with Jo van Walraven, who's our arts. She's a policy advisor, works on arts and other things. But we can have a look at that, and happy to bring a report back around that. I think some of the loss of inertia is because, to some degree, with the Arts Forum not having council involved in it. So that's, I think that's part of it.
Something that's just slipped under the radar, and we've not given it to someone as a portfolio to manage.
There are things happening. We obviously fund Creative Waikato through a multi-year grant. You know, the example of the Arts Award, my recollection, having been on the Arts Forum, is that was really, the group actually thought it was probably more suited to Creative Waikato actually running the awards rather than council running them, but council obviously could support it with other people.
And that's what it says in the arts agenda. That's where my frustration is this morning with the report.
Yeah, but we're happy to report back on those things. So
yeah. Okay, so when you're ready, I'll just add a thing into the motion. Thanks. Thank you.
Councillor Henry.
Report. Look, I just want to ask one question, and you talked about the caravan, and I think it's a great idea, and I'm just wondering where you're taking it, because I'm thinking, you know, sometimes we live in a suburb and we don't really realize what's happening in the city. So are you taking it within the city, or are you going to take it outside of the city into the greater Waikato?
There are probably
as well?
two major uses of it. Well, actually three. One is it's actually parked inside our building, so it's actually currently it's another meeting space, and it looks quite spectacular if you come into our space as a caravan. Second of all, it is most specifically for the region outside of Hamilton. Again, you're keeping in mind we're funded by Trust Waikato to deliver across the whole region, and we have very strong visibility in Hamilton. Our visibility is not as strong in the region. So it's really a tactical PR and marketing tool to help people realise when we're in town and that we are there. And rather than saying, oh, we'll meet you at this cafe, we're going to park in the main street, come and find our caravan. That would be the main thing. But the other thing is we'll take it to events and we'll take it, you know, for key promotional activities. So Hamilton Gardens Arts Festival and, you know, Boone Festival and other things like that. We'll use it kind of tactically for those reasons, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Councillor Gallagher.
The regional agencies in terms of economic development, Te Waka and the Waikato Hamilton Tourism Agency, historically I've seen promos of the Waikato, the river and all that, but I don't get that they're using or honouring the arts and creative arts as part of our whole mix of attracting people to the Waikato and also the economic downstream benefits.
Yep.
What's the current state of play? I mean, that's just my anecdotal observation. It may not have validity, but...
Oh, I think it's pretty valid.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. So good news, and I just realised it's not in my report. It's probably because it's a new initiative. We recognise that very specifically. We are about to launch an initiative which, one thing I haven't mentioned is Creative Waikato is, as we said, Trust Waikato is our primary funder. When we started, it was $400,000 a year. It went up to $500,000. They've just increased our funding to $650,000 a year. That is allowing us to do this additional work that I'm talking about. And one of the projects is something that we're initiating this year called Creative Journeys. So we are going to build a number of micro journeys that you could do within a 30-minute drive that take you through a collection of different creative experiences, but we're also going to include other things, notes, points of interest, points of Māori significance, and where there's some really good food and wine. But integrate that, but take it from a very much an arts lens. We are going to initiate that because we recognise that gap. So we're going to take some, other than whinging about it, we're going to take some, well, I have been whinging about it a lot. So I'm going to stop whinging and change it. And we're going to develop these series of creative journeys. Now, I have spoken to Jason at Waikato Tourism, and he loves it. And they're right on board and they're going to support that. So that's a way that I think we can start changing the narrative from green grass and sport, which we love, but it's not all green grass and sport.
Well, I mean, I would, in Te Waka as well. It just seems.
And Te Waka, yes, sorry, and they completely get it as well.
That does not speak to the huge proportion, and look at your figures, look at your percentages.
Yep.
Questions, please.
Well, I just think can you confirm that Creative Waikato will be having further discussions with Te Waka perhaps to up the narrative around the creative arts?
Yes, I can, Martin.
Thank you.
I need to add one point to that, which is very specific, and I think you'll all find it very exciting. We have just signed a formal agreement with Te Waka and with Trust, who are they? Waikato Tourism, Hamilton Waikato Tourism and ourselves, and we've gone into a formal partnership to help support the development of a Waikato Film Office.
Brilliant.
So Waikato Film Office is about economic development, it's about creative development, and it's about bringing industry and new opportunities and professional development into this region. So I look forward to coming back to talk to you about that. So at the moment we are helping the person who is leading that initiative with a strategy to move that forward. So, I mean, that's a great example of how we have a direct alignment.
That's good. No, that's good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor King.
Thank you, Sarah. Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch and Dunedin have received substantial funding from central government agencies over a long period of time for arts Excuse me. Hamilton, is it true that Hamilton had been left behind or had never actually been included as a part of that group of 4, even though Dunedin's population is smaller than ours?
Yeah, I think that would be fair to say. There's 2 sides to that. One is arts funding for activity, which I've shown you has turned around. The other one is arts funding into infrastructure. But the argument would be, and I think it would be reasonable, we haven't had the arts infrastructure to invest in. The previous Minister for Arts and Culture used to say, bring me a vision that we can invest into. And again, so I think that narrative is starting to change.
So we did have our own orchestra which couldn't get funding when the Dunedin Orchestra was.
So question making, please.
That is a question. That we did have things to put up, but we were sidelined. Why was that?
I think it comes back to 2 things, but again, infrastructure, not having the kind of performance spaces of professional enough standard for them to flourish in. So it was sort of, you're kind of not punching up at the right level to be funding you at that professional standard. And there's, look, we could talk forever about Trust Waikato Symphony Orchestra versus Opus Orchestra. It's a very complex argument, but there's some political views on those models in central government.
So are we now receiving similar funding from the various government agencies as someone
Not
like
similar, but we've started. We now have, that's what I was referring to around kahakatea funding. So we now have a level of funding for our orchestras that we've never had before, and it's a matter of now building that confidence in that relationship. It's tracking in the right direction. It's not what it should be, but it's tracking in the right direction. And look, it's not only just about orchestras, it's about kapahaka. Mm-hmm. You know, it's about, there's many art forms which I think you could apply the same argument, but it's a valid argument.
So we're still tracking well behind Dunedin?
I'm sorry, I couldn't specifically give you Dunedin figures, but I know what we need, and we don't have it yet, but we're getting there.
When did this start to change?
Over the last 5 years, as I've shown you as those figures, that's changed. And when we got that kahakatea funding for Orchestra Central last year, that was pretty significant.
Yeah.
And some of the funding that has, gone into major grants in the meantime.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor King. Councillor Tooman.
Madam Chair. Under the heading artillery, I was a bit confused about the heading. I noticed that you've delivered 55 workshops with 480 attendees, and you've travelled over 8,000 kilometres around the Waikato. You've obviously put a heap of work into this, but it only averages about 8.7 persons per workshop. Is that a good result or not?
Yep, that's a great result.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay. So these.
We would have liked 20, but we know that the impact of every time 8 to 10 people come to a workshop, it's significant on the community you're delivering in.
Okay. So these would be held in places like Tikawiti and
yes,
all over the country?
Quite often in rugby clubs, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you everyone for those good questions. We'll look at the motion. Angela's added to it. I'll be happy to second that when I see it. Okay, so what have we got there? We're receiving the report, which is what it was, and request staff to report to the 14th May CS&E meeting with a report on the annual scorecard on the achievements from the arts agenda. That's realistic, I would think. Pardon, I've already seconded it. Sorry, but
Just a question, that's the annual scorecard for 2018,
it'll be an update. We haven't reported against that particular document like we should have, it appears, and that's what Angela's trying to address here. So, that being the case, we'll go into.
Just to be clear, what an annual scorecard is for a year. What year?
It's a framework, it's a reporting document, and I think, if I'm right, Councillor O'Leary is wanting an update. We haven't had one at all, so we probably need to look at both years in actual fact. and just come up to speed with where it's at and the relevancy now of that document and where it sits with all the changes that have occurred since that time, for example. So I think the intent is quite clear. So anyway, and then Angela, as the mover, is able to speak to that recommendation, that motion. And, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, our arts agenda is a strategy that this council has that's been in place for quite some time. We haven't retired it. And we took some years to develop that arts agenda with the community, in particular with Creative Waikato. So it is a little bit disappointing that we've dropped the ball on this. That is my intent with this motion. Thank you for an excellent report. I believe that, well, actually in the report you talk about arts and culture, and it said that 62% of people over the region say that arts are a good way to learn about different cultures, and more than ever today that is the time to drive an opportunity like that. For those members around the table that are interested in the dollar, there is significant untapped economy in the arts, and I think we've barely actually scratched the surface of that. We've got a lot more to do, but it's evident today from Sarah's report that not only are we now attracting funding, but we are building infrastructure and we are building capacity. So I look forward to, on the 14th of May in this committee, the opportunities that we will be able to grab with a bit of a stock take of what's been missing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. I'll support this, but I'm just disappointed again that it's a really sloppily written resolution. I don't know what the heck the annual scorecard is. So, and I've had no recent decent answer from the question I asked. I'll support the motion, but I just, it's just sloppy, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Mallett. I'm just in speaking to this from my own perspective. The reason that we brought this focus on arts to the meeting is because we are aware that we haven't had an art update for a while. Of course, last year being very busy with the long-term plan and other matters, and it was timely, given what is ahead of us and what's been happening, to have a good close look at this. And I'm quite excited with what you've said. I mean, like you say, your whole report was a good news report, with the money coming into our region, with the range of creativity across our communities, and the fact that we are being considered as leading the way is awesome. So congratulations once again to all of your team and all the other partners that you work alongside. And I know that Council is working with you in various different levels, but it sounds to me that we need to have a little tidy up on some of those connections, have a close look at some of the strategies and partnerships that we've got, just to make sure that, of course, as they should be, fit for purpose today. And that work can be done quite easily, and that's why I support Councillor O'Leary's motion, because I think that will enable that to just come together and happen. So is there any other further debate, councillors? No? So thank you for all your very good questions. Thank you for your excellent report, Sarah. We'll go to the vote on the screen, please.
The motion is carried unanimously.
There we go. Thank you, everyone. And now we're moving on to sport, or actually, we're moving on to play. We're going into a play focus. So, in respect to this, do you want Matthew to come up and speak?
No, I think it's okay.
You're all right back there, Matthew? You don't want to, but you're there. But you're there for questions, and Rebecca, if we should need questions from you. Thank you. Yes.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, everyone. So I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Amanda Banks, a Policy Advisor for Social Development and Recreation in the Community Group. And I have here with me Nick Chester, who's Team Leader in Policy and Planning. So from the outset of this strategy, we were really explicit that we wanted to focus on getting our own house in order. and that this in turn was going to help others in the play ecosystem to succeed. However, we've also drawn really heavily on the relationships with people that we work with in this space, and I'd just like to acknowledge some of those here today. So, as you mentioned, we've got Matthew Cooper and Rebecca Thorby up the back from Sport Waikato. They and other members of their team have been really supportive of this work over the last year, whether it be through information and data or working through strategy objectives. So thank you very much for that. Also like to draw your attention to the letter that you will have seen in your OneDrive from Sport New Zealand, which I have hard copies here if need be, just indicating support for our play strategy and the way that we've developed the work and the innovative approach that we've taken. So we're currently leaders in this space at the moment, so well done to you all along the way that you've supported that through briefings. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge the staff that have inputted into this work. It can be really easy when developing strategy to sometimes think that you've got all the answers and you just need to pull the information together and produce a document. That's not the case at all. There's been staff across the community group, across our city transportation, our city waters, city planning as well. So some parts of the business that we might not think have anything to do with play have really taken this on board and looked at how we can improve the wellbeing of people within Hamilton through being able to get out and be physically active. I guess too, that as I said, this is quite an innovative approach, and so always good, I think, to just remind us of the purpose, of the definition of play, which is around organised sport, informal recreation, and the pop-up or spontaneous play. So this is not a getting rid of organised sport, this is an expansion, so it's organised sport and, so that we can support more people to be physically active. And finally, just like to mention that the cost of developing this strategy is around $45,000 over the last year. So happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you for that definition, because I was going to ask you to supply a definition so that our wider community who might be tuned in to the webcam or reading about this in a different forum understand that this is in fact about a full range of activity across our communities, and so that was really useful. We have quite a few councillors wanting to ask questions, and to keep things timely, I'm going to ask that you do no more than your 3 most important questions and keep them succinct, because we all have had a lot of time with staff stepping through the draft document, and it is a document that's going to go out for further. So you've had a lot of time on it. Let's keep our questions short, to the point, and no more than 3 per member, please. Starting with Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you. Congratulations on the report, and also to Sport Waikato on this work. Now, I know I've been hitting this theme often, and I know it relates to our open spaces policy. But I notice an interesting figure on page 63 of my real paper agenda that you note around of young people aged 8 to 17 years who have been active in the last 7 days, 59%, nearly 60%, were in a playground, park, field, astroturf or outdoor pool, etc. And what I'm trying to do is, in terms of... it's actually, sorry, I should... No, for you who are on electronic form, look, it's on page 12 of the report. Yeah, it's page 12 of the actual play report. Yeah. Page, Hamilton's current state of play, under how people currently play. Okay. Now, this is around our whole strategy around the walking, okay? So I get you can drive to a netball court if you have a car or you have 2 cars, whatever. I'm looking at the whole issue of the spontaneous play of walking, going to play, basic play on a playground, kick a ball around, spontaneous stuff, because you've got a field wide enough or big enough. And what I'm trying to seize on is what work are we doing around, are we identifying any areas of the city that may be less, what's the maximum, in terms of walking, what is the ideal walk from your house to some sort of playground or green space? So what work have we done in that area? I'm talking about the physical distance stuff.
I haven't got the specific detail on that, but there are staff in the room who have. Did you want me to draw on those in terms of proximity?
I think that's something that we can supply to you. At the moment, we are focused on the draft play strategy, and it isn't in there as a specific, is it?
The distance to...
Walkable distance
no.
to... No.
But that is in some of our other documentation.
I've got 3 questions. My second question is, have we done any work, and Lance may help, obviously, around areas of the city we think, because of the high density nature and the high traffic arterial movements, where some neighbourhoods may be more disadvantaged than others in terms of having ready, close, safe access to spontaneous recreation opportunities in terms of playgrounds, green space.
Yeah, so we've captured some of that in the strategy. I guess at this point probably quite useful to mention that this is a strategy that's very high level. It's got a vision, purpose statement and outcome areas to broadly set a direction of travel. What we're proposing after we've adopted this is that we then next level down is some of those actions, so that we're separating those 2 processes. In terms of your mentioning about, I guess, disadvantage in some areas and advantage in others, we've picked up on those themes throughout the strategy, and so that we're looking to create an even playing field. So the next step would be looking across our city and looking at those sorts of things where we're layering up what our green space networks looks like with our transport network, with our social demographic information, and looking at areas that need more.
So that's further work to be done.
But we've set that as a sort of a direction in the strategy.
And my third and final question is, bearing in mind, the issue of we are now one of the highest settlement density cities in New Zealand. What work are we doing obviously with Sport Waikato and yourself, with the schools, in terms of them being a part of the strategy, in terms of making school grounds and facilities available after school hours to help our play strategy?
Yep, so in the first outcome area, which will be it's on page 9 of the strategy. I'm not too sure what it will be on your agenda.
That's on page 60 of the agenda.
Yep. You've got the outcome areas.
Yep, so that first one, we're talking about reimagining Hamilton as an urban playground and around creating a connected and accessible network of play opportunities. Heard your point really clearly in the briefing around working with others to not so much care about the ownership of those green spaces, but to look at the experience for Hamiltonians about how they can move through the city. So again, we've set the high level direction of that, those conversations with schools, with private gully owners, and across council. Good. That's definitely something that we've got as a next step.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor Bunting.
This must be a lot of fun making this one. Thank you for your report. During our drop-in sessions, I think I was with Dave for that one, and we were expressing a little tiny bit of concern about the wording of the purpose statement around the implication that Hamilton City Council provides spaces, etc. So the implication was that it's up to us to provide all of those spaces. What's your thinking on that now, and did you adjust anything, or where are we at with that?
Yeah, so we didn't adjust anything because the agenda had already gone out. I'd sent you an email, which hopefully you may have received, that suggested that you raise that, if that was something that you wanted to do, to raise that in council here and get an amendment to the plan. But I think your sentiment was right, in terms of that messaging that council doesn't do everything. So really up to you on that. Yeah.
So you're asking 1B, you're asking for us to come up with an amendment to that purpose? If
wording. That's what you're wanting to see changed, yeah.
Okay.
So we discussed that as staff, and our suggestion is, if you do want to change anything, is Hamilton City Council provides and facilitates spaces, facilities, etc. So that I know what your concern is, that it might seem that we have to do everything. And I think Councillor Gallagher's point around that, there's education board land, there's a whole bunch of other spaces as well that can be provided by others rather than just council. But It is a significant role for council. You know, we are the largest landowner in the city, 1,100 hectares.
It's wrong to suggest to us that we have to do an amendment, a formal amendment in a meeting like this to change some wording where there's sort of, it's maybe broad agreement or something like that. But that's not even how we do the annual plan or that. We don't write them in committee. You know, maybe we just go and make a submission to our own plan because we can't get it through. Or so, you know, they can't get, there's no easy way. That's an immensely cumbersome way of looking at minor changes.
Yes, you make a good point.
Yeah.
That is why this was done the way it was, so that everybody could go through it word by word in great detail with Amanda and team.
Yep.
And I think what we've landed on is that after speaking to the majority, if not all, I assume everyone took the opportunity to come to you, don't know, this is where it has landed in the best space. And so we're trying to keep that high level. Up to
Oh, I think we're okay because it's a recommendation to council.
Yep.
And then taking that on board, then we can add that in when it goes to council if members are comfortable with that.
So it is, the recommendation says that it's approving the draft Hamilton Play strategy, which assumes that if there is the will of council around a particular point to make a change, that can be accomplished, right, within that process. But as you're right, Dave, sitting here today and having all of us wordsmith would possibly not be useful, but you can, at least in your debate, in your questioning, get a sense of whether council accept that thinking. And Lance has already given you a potential solution for the one that you've raised, Mark.
Okay.
Where a couple of additional words won't weaken the intent of the original wording, but might enhance it.
So there's an opportunity to put it in later on without creating a big word fest right now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll take that avenue, thank you. And my second and final question, I do have three, but I'm offering my third one for sale for anybody. With my transport hat on, with your discussions coming up with this, where did you see the opportunity for play creeping into everyday transport?
Yeah, so obviously the off-road network that we have through our open spaces, linking with footpaths and our roads, those we've got some sever points throughout the city, which we can definitely close up. Those conversations with our transport team are ongoing about how we best do that. But certainly, as you'll see in the statistics that were referred to earlier, people walk a lot. And they walk on council footpaths and through open space networks. So that's detail that we're still yet to get to, but I guess that outcome area around that connected network and working with our partners, that's going to be something that we'll do in detail after this.
I guess what I'm looking for is where do you see active transport or walking to work, biking to work, scootering to work, dovetailing into this? And how can we work with Access Hamilton?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And again, still yet to work out that process of how to be of best use to that team and support them in their thinking. But certainly the conversations that we've had with our transport department are that they're very, what they're trying to achieve in Access Hamilton are very much in alignment with the play strategy.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Can I just make a comment? I think this strategy also changed the culture internally so that people think a bit wider. And an example just in developing this was the stormwater team actually talking about some of our reserves we have that have stormwater drainage systems, etc., through them, and how can we turn those into places that are where kids can actually have the experience that we might have had in our childhood, as you know, going down to a creek and seeing eels and, you know, a whole bunch of different things, and because some of those experiences aren't readily available for some communities at the moment. So we've just seen that culture change, and I think then the way that we've developed this then is getting everyone to talk to each other around these things. So whether it's transport or stormwater or whatever, then how does this actually help influence that? And then what other areas where their key focus is, how does it actually influence play as well?
Thank you, Lance.
Mangai Tapora.
Kia ora, just one question from me under cultural considerations. So we've got Te Hao Kirikiriroa, or Te Whenua Kirikiriroa invited to provide feedback. What was that feedback?
So they didn't really provide any feedback at the time. They were given the opportunity, so we talked them through the process of developing it, and they didn't have feedback at the time, but we'll certainly connect back with them again, and they had a really full agenda that day. Yeah. So, and there wasn't any emails or anything that came through as a result of them.
But you're going back again to talk to them?
Yeah, and I guess just in addition to that is the community engagement that we undertook. So we went to a whole lot of events across the city that were already happening, and there was a couple of those in particular that had really high Māori, attendance at those events. So in terms of Māori voices, we were quite happy that as a community engagement thing that we got quite a diverse, Māori as well as other ethnicities, quite a diverse sort of representation of, I guess, the play conversation. So while Te Hao Whenua or Kirikiriroa is one forum to gather that voice, there was also a broader community voice that was gathered.
Okay. That would have been nice to even hear that about the diversity, the Māori input around that kapa. Thank you.
So just on that, just to keep the flow, is there an opportunity for Māngai Te Pora to address that a bit further with you in this draft phase? Would that be something that you would be? Yeah. Okay, so we'll just, that would be great. Thank you. Councillor Mallet, you're next.
Thank you. Just a presentation point first. I found the handwritten bits quite hard to read. I suppose they were done to show you our artistic bent, but I found them hard to read.
Questions, please, Councillor Mallet.
Yeah, well, it's important that you can read things. And also, I found it, there's a huge number of platitudes in there which I found difficult to get your head around. So I hope that somewhere behind this there's some sort of concrete ideas or things or processes that are going to go through. Just on Mark's point, which is I'd also highlighted that we're talking about using streets and footpaths and things like that. You are very aware that we're moving into a world where there's Paxters and scooters and mobility scooters, all sorts of things, push bikes. How real is that?
How real is what?
That you can get, one of the limited knowledge I have of road safety and footpath safety is separation, keeping individuals away from mobile vehicles.
Sorry,
so I think we're turning our, this is sort of turning our footpaths into motorways, isn't it?
Sorry, what's your question? Sorry, I don't quite understand.
So what have you? How do you square that up with us trying to keep our footpaths safe for the old folks, the young folks?
So I think this is a little bit off track.
No, it's not. It's right on bang, and it's a question. I want the answer, please.
Yeah. So, do you understand where he's going with that? He's suggesting that the play strategy is inconsistent with the reality of scooters, bikes, etc. on footpaths.
Sure. So I guess I would think that, you're quite right, the safety on the footpath, so we look at roads are predominantly places for people and cars to drive and cyclists as well. The issue of safety on the footpaths and those spaces increasingly being used for other forms of movement, that is an issue, and it's an issue that certainly people within the disability sector have raised around safety. I would say that would be a policy issue that would need to be worked through with transport, so that if we're wanting to support people to be more active, if we see that safety on footpaths, just being able to walk down to the path, walk down to the park, being able to run around the block, if that safety is an issue and is stopping people from being physically active, then that's a conversation that we need to have with our transport team.
How can that not be a conversation you should have already had?
We already have, but I guess in a more formal way, and they're certainly trying to work through those sorts of issues too.
Okay, last question.
So what sort of resolution have you come to?
None yet, because it's an ongoing conversation, and I guess in working through that notion about a connected network across the city of being able to walk or run or cycle, safety will be a key issue with that. And certainly a lot of the community feedback that we got around people cycling was that they didn't want to, or they wanted to be safe. Sometimes they didn't feel safe on road, so we need to look at that, but we also need to ensure that our off-road cycle and walkways are safe as well and provide for all those people who choose to use it so that they can be active.
Okay, thank you. How does this change
This
what
is
our
your last
current
question,
strategy is?
Councillor Mallett. Last question. Sorry, what's that?
How does this change what I'm just trying to, because a lot of it's a lot of platitudes in here and that sort of stuff, and I can't see how this changes what we're currently doing.
Sure. So the Active Hamilton strategy, which was the one that this was the review of it, was quite strongly focused on organised sport, and that's fine. Organised sport is absolutely a central part of the play ecosystem. Some of the research that's come out of Sport New Zealand and some of the work that Sport Waikato has done has indicated that organised sport is not sometimes for everyone, whether it be barriers to playing through cost of equipment, whether it be barriers to not really feeling welcome to turn up to club rooms or in a team or other family commitments. And so that has an impact on people's ability to play or to be physically active. And so therefore we're getting limited uptake of those benefits of physical activity. So this strategy is about saying absolutely organised sport, let's support that and keep that strong, but let's also make sure that we're doing an and. So through the informal recreation and the pop-up play in our streets and just being able to be active wherever you are, let's make sure that we're doing that as well. And I guess one of the initiatives that Sport Waikato has developed recently is called This Is Me, which is focused on women and girls being able to be more physically active. It's steeped really strongly in research, both academic research and voice of the participant. And so we've drawn some of those thoughts into this strategy as well, some of the stuff around socioeconomic barriers too. So in short, it's an expansion, organised sport and some add-ons as well, would be a short answer.
Thank you. I think that you did answer the question. Councillor Henry.
Chair, look, I loved the drop-in session, thank you, and just getting some more info. Now, pictures speak 1,000 words, and when I saw the pictures, and I saw, which is great ethnic diversity in them, but we are also the 600th city that is age-friendly, and I did not see anybody, well, Amanda, you might have been the oldest in the picture. I'm so sorry, but you're not old. So,
yeah, sure.
So, yeah, like me, someone old like me. That's right. Yeah, so I wonder, can that be incorporated in there, because is there a possibility?
Yeah, and we looked at the strategy once we'd finished it too, and both Nick and I, and so Nick has led the age-friendly plan for Hamilton. We thought, wow, we haven't got pictures of older people playing, whether it be organised sport, mature. Yeah, and so absolutely that's we own that, and we're committed to making sure that we capture that. One of the events that we hold or that we contribute to, the Kaumatua Olympics. We can get photos of that, and certainly older people, more mature people playing sport. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Nick?
No, I don't
Councillor
think,
McPherson playing volleyball.
I think that answers the question very well.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it.
Councillor O'Leary?
I think there's quite a few models that you could take from this chamber for that photo shoot. Not looking at anyone in particular.
So I can leave a list up here for later if you want.
Deputy Mayor, I'm sure he would volunteer. I just wanted to question, I'm on page 24 under welcoming committees. I'm interested in your thoughts. Would there be any advantage for us to join, be part of the Immigration New Zealand's Welcoming Committees program? I see it's a pilot at the moment.
Sorry, I'm not too sure which page.
Page 24 of the actual report, under point 26, it talks about the oh, sorry, am I on the wrong? Oh, I'm on the wrong report. Hang on, because that's right, we haven't
done the welcoming communities yet.
Wait, hold please, caller. Okay.
That's the ethnic one.
It is. I will ask that. Okay. All right, so I don't have many questions, which is good. Just one question under the outcome area 1. Now, I don't have a page for this. 22. Have you considered an economic aspect to the strategy, and if not, why not?
So earlier on, we talked with Hamilton and Waikato Tourism about what we were looking at doing. The economic aspect of sport, recreation play in general is absolutely relevant. Also had a chat with Don Scarlett, who is with Mighty River Power and connected with tourism as well. His idea about Ride the Waikato River. So absolutely those economic links are really strong. Some of them will be things that we can do in terms of infrastructure, but certainly sports tourism around, viewing games at Seddon Park and the rugby. Looking at those will be specific actions about how we support that.
Yeah.
But that economic, I guess, benefit of particularly the connected network, if we could sort of get to a point where we could market Hamilton as an urban playground, that you turn up and you ride and you walk and you see art and you have great coffee and and then you stay the night in a hotel and then so those connections have been made here, and it's something that we've thought strongly about.
That's exactly what I was looking for, because in the future, when we have developed the river area and the theatres open, with one of the strategies under here is informal recreation, isn't it? And that does actually draw what you've said, so you've considered that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Perhaps a follow-on from Councillor O'Leary's questions. Do you have a list of specific projects that are already funded in the long-term plan that will help activate the strategy?
So we're currently undertaking a sports field capacity plan sort of study with us, Waikato and Waipa as well, looking at what our sports fields look like in terms of capacity and what we might do to achieve the best capacity. We've also got the Playgrounds of the Future plan, which you heard of a few weeks ago. So along the way, we've been checking in with staff to make sure that those, that was a bit cart before the horse, but it had to be. And so making sure that those are well aligned between the play strategy and the delivery plan. What else was there? Oh, that's right, the University of Waikato indoor court facility. Those conversations have already kicked off. So yeah, there's a number of things throughout the long-term plan that are already in line with this.
Yep.
Yeah.
So going forward, will you have a mechanism that will measure or benchmark, the wins or the losses, or those that have got a question mark alongside, in terms of coming back to us and saying, well, we've got a strategy? And I always worry about strategies because they kind of sit on the table and gather a bit of dust. Will you have a mechanism to come back and tell us over time how the strategy is performing?
Yep. So yes, so we can report back to you regularly at a time frame that works for you, and also this strategy is great timing in terms of our next long-term planning. Yep. In terms of the projects, is that there's already some that have come up through conversations with staff and the community. So we'll be looking to develop those a little bit further, but certainly this will be the roadmap, I guess, for developing those projects. And so the point at which that comes back to you is through the long-term plan.
Okay, thanks, Amanda.
I think there's also some good KPI type information from the Active New Zealand survey that's carried out each year. Matthew's team do have a quite a robust reporting framework back to Sport NZ. Probably one of the key KPIs is how active Hamiltonians are, and then that obviously links into health statistics and things like that. So that's a real key focus now for Sport NZ with their community sport funding, is to really look at the areas of our population, of our community, where there's probably they're getting the least benefit or the most harm is actually happening. They're probably not quite the right words, but is actually then targeting resources and focus and that sort of thing without losing sight of the 70% of people are generally doing quite well.
Thank you. Just a question. Oh, question. I was going to question. Pardon?
I'll be quite keen to move this one if that's okay.
I did already move it.
Oh, you have moved it?
But look, I'm welcome for you to move it. I'll second it. I'm
No dramas.
absolutely relaxed with that.
Thank you.
Amanda, just a couple of questions from my perspective. So, am I correct in assuming then that this strategy will span all areas of council's work? It's an overarching. So, because we've already heard comments around transport, but it will also go over things like parks and reserves, events, formal sporting facilities, and those kind of matters will all be. So that's the intention, is to bring all of those things, the focus of play across all of those areas of council work, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and the reporting framework, as you've said, Lance, there are some really good reporting frameworks in place. Some of those will come through those other areas of council work, yes. Some will come through Sport Waikato, and some of them will be key indicators that you will work up and report to council, is that right?
That's right.
So at some stage, if we adopt this and it goes through, we will have some input into what indicators we're interested in receiving progress reports about. Is that how that goes? That's the next stage of the project,
That's
is
right.
it? Yeah, right. Good. Okay, thank you. That's clear.
We'll make sure that ties in what Julie Clausen does for reporting right across the council too, so everyone's clear on that.
Yeah, hang on, I haven't got into debate yet, but you're into debate. So Councillor Bunting has now moved, and it's debate, yeah, and I've seconded. So now we are into debate, but of course Councillor Bunting gets to talk first as the mover.
Cool. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks staff for the support. It's probably one of the most ones I've been most excited about in my term in council, as you probably gathered. There's nothing to be afraid of in this report, and it plays very close to my personal vision for Hamilton, which is a happy, healthy Hamilton. And I find it as necessary because it's one of our community outcomes, which is, to me, the strongest document we've got, which says that, you know, we are one of our aspirations is to be a great river city in which to live, work, play and visit. And so this addresses that, it puts some strategy around that. But I'm perhaps even more ambitious for this than some of the staff are, in that I can see this overarching many of our other fields. It's an element that we incorporate into, you know, I speak with some passion about Access Hamilton, and I can see that we can incorporate this into transport, strangely enough, and I don't think we need to be too worried about playing bull rush on cycle lanes. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the idea that how can we make the very act of getting from one side of the town to the other more fun, more enjoyable. And that's the kind of city I want to live in, and that's the kind of city I want to promote, a playful Hamilton. And I think this addresses that really well, so I thank you for that. I see it incorporating into a development community as well, saying, hey, look, you know, this is a very nice place, but a bit boring, zhuzh it up a bit. Perhaps not use those words, but with that intention. And I was really encouraged to hear you, Lance, with your language around the culture. It's already starting to permeate through. And I think in this day and age where we've just been through what we've been through, it's time to stop and smile and enjoy our city big time. So I know it all sounds a little bit fluffy, but when you look at what's happening on a sociological point of view, there's an outfit called the Water Boy. And they're an excellent outfit, charitable organisation that's getting a lot of trust. It's quite simply because the play as we know it has become out of reach to a lot of our community. The organised sports have become commoditised and monetised, and a lot of kids just simply can't play because they can't afford. And so the market's moved on, the market's found new ways to play. And we, with this strategy, have become more responsive to that. And now that's not to say that organised sport doesn't have a role, but play's becoming more organic, play's becoming more permeative, if you like, in what we do. So I'm really excited that you and your team have jumped ahead of that game a little bit, made us a little bit more nimble. And again, it's nothing to be afraid of, it's everything to be excited about. And yeah, I'm really happy to move this. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks, Chair. Well said, Mark. I admit to perhaps naively being a little bit resistant to this at the start and thinking this isn't core business of council, and I struggled with it a little bit, but I've really grown on this journey watching you put this together, Amanda and Nick, and the way that you've defined our role as a collaborator, partner, facilitator, I really like, and I understand the common sense behind it. I'm really impressed with the 4 outcome areas, because I think that really distills down and percolates what we do, and how you've driven that in terms of how it will distill out our priorities in terms of investment and how that will inform our 10-year plan. So well done. I think it's a brilliant result. And if anyone would support me on an amendment, I'd encourage we nominate Mark as the play mascot.
I'm not wearing any costume.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm very supportive of this as well, and I want to congratulate staff and Chair. It is high level, but it's a great foundation for this council. We've worked closely with Sport Waikato. Thank you, Matt, for your team, for your expertise there. And personally, I do really like that emphasis on the expanded emphasis on what play is, not just your traditional organised sport, but the spontaneous play. That is where the world is heading, I think, and we should be aware of it, and we should be accommodating it, and we are, which is fantastic. I also like that phrase, reimagining Hamilton as an urban playground. I think if we just keep that in our head, then it's going to have an impact on our design across a whole lot of areas. Another big point for me is partnerships. These need to be a huge factor, and I'm hoping that this strategy will reinforce that. I'm thinking it can't always fall upon ratepayers to provide all the opportunities for play, for fields, for all sorts of things. And I would look forward to the fact if this strategy gives us more guts, I think, to work with clubs to encourage them to share facilities where applicable. And particularly with schools, I think, I would really like to see us work proactively with schools to encourage better partnerships. I don't think anyone should have to confront a locked up sports field. I just don't think that's on. I think you can lock away and fence away classrooms from vandalism, but not sports fields. They should belong to everyone. And I'm hoping that, and I'm pretty confident that as schools open up now, we work with them from the start. We've seen that with Rototuna, so that we can have a great partnership right from the start. But I would also like to see us revisit some of the schools that have already gone down that path and see if we can actually find a way to actually get them to play ball with us, so to speak. If it means we need to to chip in for maintenance, for vandalism or something, I don't know. But maybe there's a way we can actually pull down some of these fences. So, guys, thank you so much. It makes me feel good to be a councillor, which after this weekend is no mean feat. It's been a tough weekend, but it's certainly brought a spring to my step today. Thank you for your great work.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor McPherson.
Positive speeches in a row there. It's great. And I have to say, for a coffee table book, this is one of the better ones. I'd put it probably near the top of the pile, if not at the top of the pile.
That's high praise indeed.
I think there's been a few good points made. One of them is about the change in nature of play. When I first started on council, which was not as far ago as when Councillor Gallagher first started, but it was a while back, all we talked about when we talked about play and recreation was how much money we were going to put into this rugby stadium or into Seddon Park, really. There was some really minor stuff around the edges about tarting up a couple of playgrounds. It was pretty small. We didn't talk about the bigger picture that Jeff and Mark and Ryan have been talking about and the report talks about. So I think that's a really positive change. And long may it continue. I think Rob made an important point, though. It needs to have implementation attached to it, so it doesn't just stay on the coffee table. We need a report on how this is getting implemented on a regular basis. We need to factor it into LTPs and annual plans and things like that, which I think we've done, but more by accident than design. It's been a sort of political jockeying to get some playgrounds or facilities into the LTP. It hasn't been because that's our strategy. That's one thing we need to change. I think another thing that I've noticed as a change is that we're now looking much more at multi-purpose facilities and services. We're no longer saying that field is just for one sport, though we have a lot of hangovers in that particular area, especially with outdoor sport. But certainly the Peak's been an example of how we said right from the start, this is for lots of sports. And how can we maximise the usage by a wide range of sports and recreation and all sorts of community activities, in fact, not even just play, really. There's been quite a lot of crossover there, and that's been a success. And you must have been aiming for my vote, because the first time I've seen a volleyball picture in here, page 71, guys. But as Rob pointed out, I'm not in the picture. I must have been away that day. But that was also a good photo, and that's our national champion Hillcrest boys team actually playing. Yes, the last thing is actually on the point that Mark first raised about whether council provides or ensures the provision of. And I think there's 2 or 3 places, not just there, that we need to change that emphasis. It's up to us, I think, to make sure it happens, but not up to us to pay for everything and do everything, nor are we doing that at the moment. That's the reality, is that other people are putting in. And perhaps the problem with that lies right on the front page, where it's called Hamilton City Council's Play Strategy. I'd really rather it was called Hamilton's Play Strategy, that we're responsible for monitoring and nurturing and promoting, something like that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Mallett.
I kind of question the usefulness of the report, because I think a lot of it is what we were already doing and already understood. So I'm not too sure how much this changes what we were doing. I mean, the talk about here, talking with rugby clubs and other clubs and that sort of stuff is, I assume, something we've been doing for 100 years. And I'd be very surprised, well, we haven't been around for 100 years, but however long we've been around. Well, Martin will know, yeah. This is clearly a very high-level report, full of abstractions. And I think Dave might have hit the nail on the head when he talked about the implementation part of this is vacant from here, and so also is anything about financing, which concerns me. So I don't know that I can support. Well, I'll listen to other people, but yeah, I'm not in love with this report at all. I don't think it's a useful document. There you go.
Thank you, Councillor Mallett. Councillor Gallagher.
Obviously, congratulate the report writers, and this is a high-level document. Congratulate Sport Waikato. Some comments around age. You don't have to be too old to observe and estimate how many hectares have been removed of play space. All the schools that have been fenced off over the last decade. Just another day of school near me, without notice, fenced off, and private security company trespassers prosecuted and all that. This is Crown funded. This is your taxes paying for these places. So over just 10 or 15 years, we need to quantify the play spaces, the recreation spaces that have gone out of circulation, that have been fenced off. I have been to Christchurch, other places where there's a program where the schools might fence off their buildings, and they, pull the gates over on the weekends and after hours so the buildings and plant are secure. How many principals can be like Delwyn Bain, a former principal of Mara Intermediate, who didn't come to us but worked out that the local neighbourhood, particularly with the new housing corp development going in there, needed the play space, so they fenced off their buildings. This is not rocket science stuff, and I really think, and I'm sorry to bang on, and I'll go on and on and on, I think this council needs to be far more blunt and assertive. We need to go to the Minister of Education, which we've done, our local MPs, and say this is madness. This is madness. We're actually not fully utilising public amenities, publicly funded grounds around schools. Now, in some cases, if you've got a big park right next to a school, all cool, you don't need it. But I think we really need to be talking about, if you live in a neighbourhood, what does it look like? Do you have to, and this is the consequences of our so-called high density development, how many areas now that you leave your small unit as a young child or a youngster with your mum or your dad or whatever, and you then cross a huge busy road and you keep walking and walking to find a green space. Just down the road there might have been a school that you might have been able to access. And that's where I think it is so crucial in terms of good planning. And this will remain a high-level document which people in middle-class areas and you guys with a comfortable life might thoroughly enjoy. But here's the deal. Go and put yourselves in the footsteps of people who live in parts of Melville, other areas where you're living in a high-density rental property, and work out what it's like for that mum or dad and the young child. And of course they're less equal than many others. Of course they're less equal. And this is, I think, a major urgency of our time. And yeah, I love to hear the wonderful thing about elite sports, but this strategy, in my view, is extremely important, and it's about giving every young child in the city of Kirikiri Hamilton the right, the fundamental human right, to have good access to good recreation and good play space not too far from their front door.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Henry.
Madam Chair, look, I agree with a lot of what has already been said, and I'm just excited that we are actually showing leadership. We're setting out to change some things in the city, and we're known for the big stadia and everything, but now we are hopefully known very soon that we do exercise while we're doing other things, and also the pop-up stuff. I just love that idea. I talked about the pictures, so we would like to have some more sophisticated people in there, or mature, whatever you want to call them. You can call them whatever you like. I'm sure the paper will find a good word for that. What the other thing I just thought about was, yes, we need to talk to transport, absolutely. Keep talking to Councillor Bunting about that. He's hot on that, and I'm really excited too, because I love play, and I think it's for all ages. And the cool thing about having that kind of play is there's old and young together. In lots of sports, you only have one age group, or you have one gender, or there is not that mixture. In this way, we have got a mixture of all genders and all age groups, and all diversity, all ethnic groups can come together in these different plays. So I'm excited, and we're not going to run each other over on the footpaths or anything, I know, because overseas there is all sorts of people are on the footpaths. I've been to Newcastle last year, walked on one of the very narrow walkways along there. They call it a creek, it looks like a river. And wow, the people were just going out of their way. There was a little bell, Councillor Bunting will love that. The bells were ringing all the time, and you just stepped to the side and you knew where you stepped to. And I don't think there's many accidents. I was amazed the amount of people that were on that footpath. But the other thing I would love to, it's not just about talking to transport. I think you could talk to waste minimisation too, because there's an amazing activity. It's called plogging, and it's the combination of jogging and picking up litter. Now, that's an amazing kind of exercise, and I would just encourage everybody to take not a plastic bag, some other bag, because we're not into plastics anymore, and a reusable bag, and pick up the litter while you are jogging or walking or biking or whatever, and use that as well. So maybe we can incorporate that in our play strategy too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I like about this strategy and the work that you've done, first of all, you've been very innovative, and I really appreciate that. I deliberately stayed away from the little groups that you had, because I wanted to, this is the first strategy that we've done this term, and I wanted to apply fresh eyes, and I think you've done a brilliant job. You know, sometimes it's as simple as reminding people how good life can be, and just enjoying the green spaces that we have. And I'm really appreciative that it doesn't look to me like we are going to be trying to over-engineer or over-manufacture people into activity. You know, we have the Hamilton Gardens, we have the Hamilton Lake, we have river walkways, so that I can't remember what you call it, but you know, that accidental, informal recreation that Councillor McPherson and I, since I started, have been talking about. is a key outcome in here, and I really appreciate that. One of the other things that's a key outcome is that we'll be responsive to change. And while I appreciate the excitement around the table of an urban playground, I don't really know what that's going to look like, but we must be responsive to change over time, and we don't know what that's going to look like. One of the significant changes, of course, that we know is that people are living longer. So we need to be responsive to those age groups. One of the other things that's been a significant change for our region is that Pacific people in a decade will double their population in our region. So what does their informal activity look like? What does their formal activity look like? So for me, the key outcome being responsive to change is the thing that I think will ground us when we perhaps charge ahead and try to put in some infrastructure because, I don't know, parquet or whatever you call it is the latest thing. Parkour is the latest thing. The responsive to change might just bear us back a little bit and think about, what could be coming up, how are our people changing and what does our city look like. So congratulations to staff. You have come up with an innovation approach to this strategy. Well done.
Thank you. Councillor Toomey.
Yeah, it's a pretty good strategy, but I think we could go a little bit further. When I look at the number of cul-de-sacs here in Hamilton City, they've got some great future tennis courts on those cul-de-sacs. No reason why they couldn't be marked out as a tennis court. It would also actually help to make our motorists a little bit more tolerant, and it'll be a great traffic calming method. I can envisage things like in the vicinity of a retirement home, you could have mobility scooter races.
Are you lining them up?
Yeah, I'm pretty good on those ones, Dave. There's so many things which we could do. I'm not advocating, of course, by having kids playing on Te Rapa Strait or anything like that, or Kaikatia Drive, but in certain parts of the city, there's no reason why this can't happen. And what will happen, of course, is the local community might actually start talking to each other. They will actually slow down when they come home from work because there may be some kids having a great game of cricket out there on the road or something like that. It doesn't really hurt on occasions to turn the clock back. And when I look back on some of the great test matches and those sort of things which we used to have on various roads around New Plymouth, and as a result of that, of course, it will actually improve the neighbourhood in which we all live. So just a few thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Toomey. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, what I like about the plan is that it's targeted towards 100% participation and focuses on all residents, irrespective of age, physical and sporting abilities. It also aligns to working with our partners, our current partners such as Port Waikato, and hopefully attracting new partners. There are opportunities out there, and very quickly, to my mind, I went to the opening of that cycle track out at the new college, which was a joint venture with a commercial operator. And we also have a public park at Deanwell School, which sits between the park and the school and was a joint venture between commercial, Ministry of Education and the council. So I think the strategy, assuming that it gets approved today, it needs to be widely circulated to notify those potential external funders. We've had instances with Schick and Downer, and we've also got philanthropic groups out there who are keen to be active in these sort of areas. So I think while Councillor McPherson might like to have the strategy at the top of his coffee table reading books, I think it needs to perhaps come off the coffee table and be widely distributed, and have our external funding group aware of what's in there too, to look at potential opportunities that commercial and philanthropic funders may have in wanting to enhance active play and participation in the city. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. I'll say a few comments if I might. I myself am a very playful person. I give anything a go. I gave cricket a go the other week. Haven't played that in a million years. It was a lot of fun. And I like the fact that there's lots of different activities that I can do. Whatever's going on, I'll probably be there giving it a go. This, from my point of view, is quite simply about how Hamilton City Council supports the health and well-being of our people across the areas of responsibility of this council, how we input to the health and well-being of people, and in all of our spaces. This supports a range of enjoyable activity in our city and supports us becoming a vibrant city in which people enjoy living. That's what it's all about for me. And so I add my voice of thanks to you for the hard work that you've done, from one blank piece of paper to a very comprehensive overarching strategy. It's really good to see Matthew and Rebecca here today sitting in support of the approach that you've taken. And I'm looking forward to see the kinds of activity and enthusiasm generated by it. And just only one word, and that is that we do need to keep on track with reporting against this strategy. What are we achieving? Because if we're not achieving what we should be, we need to look at the areas of our work that are not achieving. I have to just say on a final point, if you've never been to, if you don't know how valuable play is as a social binder, as for making people happy, you should attend. I've attended them all, the Kaumatua Games, where you will see seniors playing the most fantastic range of games, and they don't stop smiling the whole 4 hours. It's just the most cohesive, wonderful event to see. So get along to that, and then you'll truly understand what play brings to a city.
Look, just to wrap up, this has probably been one of the most enjoyable reports, as I said earlier on. The reason, and there's a few points I want to raise from people here, but the reason I really like it is that we're working with our why here. We're at that level where we as a governance group should be looking at, rather than the what are we doing, it's the why are we doing it, and this hauls that back into space, so thank you for that. Siggy, I was really pleased to see what you said about the waste thing, and I can imagine backboards on those wheelie bins. Actually, as you heave the rubbish in from the other side of the yard or whatever it is. But as you can see, and I'm joking, but it's already starting to permeate through the language, and that's everything to us. Let's have a little bit more fun in what we do. It's got so many implications for our arts sector. The whole Boone thing could come under the play, or it could tie into that beautifully. Waste, our development sector, our community sector, our community gardens. I see that as creeping into this as well. That's enjoyable. Not everyone's throwing a ball around when they're playing. So, Siggy, I was delighted to hear you say that. Martin, or Deputy Mayor, beg your pardon, I echo your point about the schools. Bear in mind, though, that kids are playing while they're in school as well. And play is not just for kids. Play is cradle to the grave, as I've heard many times, and so we need to be very cognizant of that. Play is for our entire community. Hamilton is for our entire community, and play follows that. Leo, yeah, you're absolutely right about the games in the street. If you could drive down Wairewa Drive and you have a look, there's a little cul-de-sac. There's a sort of opposite Huntington. There's actually already a permanent little basketball hoop in there that someone's put in. Now, that actually says a lot to me. It's because we didn't put it in, so to say, thou shalt play basketball there. Someone put it in, and we let them do it. And that's the kind of thing I think this does. This gives mind to the encouragement for the community to do that. Dave, yep, it will be another coffee table book, but for your pleasure, we will make a colouring in version so you can play with that, enjoy that. And I also like the fact that it takes the heat out of that revolting playground debate we had about a year ago, because it gives us a reason why. Does this fit in with our strategy? And it takes all that personal heat out of that. But the reason I like this the most is that this is a policy that starts with yes and then works from there. And I love working in that space, so thank you.
Woo, spontaneous.
That's excellent. We'll go to the vote. Have we voted? Is somebody not voted? Leo?
The motion is carried, 1 against, 13 for.
Thank you. Councillors, we're going to have a, I know we've got the ethnic report coming up, but we have been sitting for almost 2 hours. We're going to have a very short morning tea break. Come back at 1:45. Because we're doing...